For years, I financially supported my brother Marcus's family while building my own business. Despite my generosity, he constantly ridiculed my career choices and modest lifestyle. Everything changed at our family Christmas party when I overheard him telling his friends there was no place for losers in his world, referring to me. I quietly cut off all financial support without explanation. 2 months later, he called in a panic about losing his house. When I declined to help, the truth finally surfaced. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever had to set boundaries with entitled family members. This is how I finally stood up for myself. Growing up in the suburbs of Portland, Marcus and I shared a typical childhood, 2 brothers 4 years apart, with the usual rivalry and camaraderie that comes with siblings. Our parents, hardworking middle-class folks, instilled in us the importance of family education and ambition. But while we received the same upbringing, we developed vastly different outlooks on life and success. From an early age, Marcus showed an uncanny knack for social climbing. By high school, he had strategically befriended the children of the wealthiest families, secured leadership positions in the most visible clubs, and dated girls with influential parents. He was handsome, charismatic, and calculating, a combination that opened doors effortlessly. I, on the other hand, was more introverted and creative. While Marcus dominated student government and sports teams, I found my place in the art room and computer lab. I was fascinated by design and technology, spending hours teaching myself coding and graphic design while my brother networked at parties. Our parents tried not to play favorites, but it was hard to ignore Marcus's trophies and accolades. "Your brother is really going places," relatives would comment at family gatherings, often within my earshot. "He has such ambition." I would smile politely, used to living in his shadow. After high school, Marcus attended an expensive private university on a partial scholarship, supplemented heavily by our parents' savings. He majored in business administration, joined the right fraternity, and continued his pattern of strategic relationship building. I opted for community college before transferring to a state school, studying web development and digital marketing while working part-time jobs to minimize student loans. By the time Marcus graduated, he had secured a position at a prestigious marketing firm through connections made during an internship. He moved into a luxury apartment, bought a BMW he could barely afford, and began dating Natalie, the daughter of a local real estate developer. Meanwhile, I was working from my modest studio apartment, building websites for small businesses and slowly growing a client base. "When are you going to get a real job?" Burton Marcus asked during a family dinner shortly after his graduation. "You cannot live like a college student forever." "I am building something," I replied. "It just takes time." "Time is money," he countered, with the confidence of someone repeating phrases from business seminars. "And appearances matter. No one will take you seriously if you look like you cannot even take care of yourself." Our parents exchanged uncomfortable glances but said nothing. They had always been conflict-averse, preferring to keep the peace rather than confront difficult situations. 2 years after graduation, Marcus and Natalie married in an extravagant ceremony that strained both families' finances. I served as best man, genuinely happy for my brother, despite our differences. 6 months later, they announced they were expecting their first child. Around the same time, my freelance business was finally gaining traction. I had specialized in creating e-commerce platforms for artisans and small manufacturers, filling a niche that larger agencies often overlooked. I still worked from home, drove a used car, and lived modestly, but my income was steadily growing. When Marcus and Natalie welcomed their son Jackson, life changed dramatically for them. Natalie decided to become a stay-at-home mom, reducing their household to a single income. They had already stretched themselves thin with an oversized mortgage on a house, in an exclusive neighborhood, car payments, and the lifestyle expected in their social circle. One evening, I received a call from Marcus that surprised me. "Burton, I need to talk to you about something." He began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "We are in a bit of a financial bind. Natalie's dad was supposed to help with the down payment on the house, but his business hit a rough patch, and now we are struggling with the mortgage." "That sounds tough," I said, genuinely concerned. "How much are you short?" The figure he named made me wince. It was substantial, nearly 3 months of my income at the time. But he was my brother, and family helps family. I can help you out this month, I offered, but that is a lot to manage long term. Just until I get my year-end bonus, Marcus assured me. 3 months tops. I would not ask if we were not desperate. That first loan turned into monthly support that continued for nearly 4 years. As my business grew more successful, I found myself increasingly subsidizing my brother's lifestyle. Marcus received promotions and raises, but instead of catching up financially, he simply upgraded their lifestyle: private preschool for Jackson, a country club membership, a newer luxury car. Meanwhile, I continued living below my means, reinvesting in my business and saving aggressively. I moved to a slightly larger apartment, but otherwise maintained my modest lifestyle, finding fulfillment in my work and close friendships rather than material possessions. What started as emergency assistance evolved into an unspoken arrangement. Each month, Marcus would call with some new crisis: unexpected medical bills, essential home repairs, car troubles, and each time I would transfer funds to help them stay afloat. Our parents remained oblivious to this financial dynamic. To them and the rest of the world, Marcus was the successful corporate executive with the picture-perfect family, while I was the quirky younger brother who had never quite figured things out. At family gatherings, Marcus would still make subtle jabs about my lifestyle choices. "When are you going to upgrade from that shoebox apartment?" he would ask over Thanksgiving dinner. "You cannot bring dates back to a place that screams starving artist." "My place works for me," I would respond, choosing not to mention that I now earned significantly more than he did, or that I was supporting his mortgage payments. "You need to start thinking about appearances," he insisted. "No one respects a man who does not present success to the world." I often wondered why I continued enabling his lifestyle while enduring his condescension, but something about family obligation kept me trapped in the cycle. Perhaps it was the years of conditioning that Marcus was the successful one, the one who was going places. Or maybe it was simply easier to pay the money than to confront the truth about our relationship. This pattern might have continued indefinitely, if not for the Christmas party that changed everything. Marcus and Natalie hosted the annual family Christmas gathering that year at their sprawling suburban home. The 5-bedroom house with its manicured lawn and 3-car garage was impressive, and I knew intimately the financial strain it caused them, having just covered their property tax bill the previous month. The house was elaborately decorated with professional-grade holiday ornaments, a towering tree adorned with color-coordinated ornaments, and catering from an upscale local restaurant. Natalie greeted guests in designer clothing, while Marcus poured expensive scotch for his colleagues from work. Their children now, including 2-year-old daughter Sophia, alongside 6-year-old Jackson, were dressed in holiday outfits that likely cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I arrived early to help set up, bringing thoughtful gifts I knew they would appreciate: custom artwork for the kids' rooms, and rare vinyl records Marcus had mentioned wanting. My parents arrived shortly after, marveling at the elaborate decorations and commenting on how successful everything looked. "Your brother has really built a wonderful life," my mother whispered to me as we arranged presents under the tree. "You could learn something from his example." I nodded and smiled, used to these comparisons. If only she knew that the catering she was admiring had been paid for with my emergency transfer last week when Marcus called claiming they could not afford both Christmas dinner and the mortgage payment. As the evening progressed, the house filled with guests, a mix of family, Marcus's colleagues, and neighborhood friends. I mingled politely, answering the usual questions about my work with simplified explanations that most people only half listened to before excusing themselves for more interesting conversations. After dinner, I offered to take the garbage out to the garage, seeking a brief respite from the noise and forced cheer. As I approached the garage door, I heard Marcus's voice from the adjoining home office, where he had retreated with 3 colleagues from his firm. "The business is really taking off this year," he was saying, his voice carrying the confident tone he reserved for professional settings. "We are looking at acquiring a vacation property in Aspen next summer. Natalie has been researching the market." One of his colleagues commented on the expense of Aspen real estate, to which Marcus laughed dismissively. "It is all about priorities," he replied. "We believe in surrounding ourselves with success." Even our children's playmates are carefully selected from families with the right background and ambition. Speaking of family, another voice interjected, "Your brother seems like a nice guy." What does he do again? There was a slight pause, and I froze by the door, garbage bag in hand. Burton. "Oh, he does something with computers. Websites or whatever." Marcus replied, his tone noticeably cooler. "He has always been content with mediocrity." "Funny, I would have guessed. You two were nothing alike," the colleague commented. "We are not," Marcus said firmly. "I learned early there is no place for losers in my world. Life is too short to associate with people who lack ambition, even family. I tolerate the connection for our parents' sake, but we operate in completely different spheres." I stood motionless, the garbage bag suddenly feeling impossibly heavy in my hand. The casual cruelty in his voice, as he dismissed not just my career but my entire worth as a person to impress colleagues, stunned me. In that moment, years of accumulated resentments crystallized into perfect clarity. Quietly, I continued to the garage, deposited the trash, and returned to the party, now seeing everything through different eyes. The house I had helped pay for, the gifts under the tree, purchased with my emergency transfers, the catering I had funded, the clothes, the cars, the private school tuition, all maintained in part by my monthly contributions, while Marcus portrayed me as someone he merely tolerated out of family obligation. I maintained my composure throughout the evening, smiling through gift exchanges and polite conversation. When the night ended, I hugged my parents, kissed my niece and nephew, and even embraced Marcus with mechanical politeness. "Great party, brother," I said, looking him directly in the eyes. "You have built quite an impressive life here." "Thanks, Burton," he replied, oblivious to my new understanding. "Maybe next year you will have something bigger to celebrate too." I nodded and walked to my car, making a decision that would permanently alter our relationship. That night, I transferred the monthly amount I usually sent Marcus, knowing it would be the last time. I added a brief message, "Merry Christmas." Then I went home, opened my laptop, and began reorganizing my financial life, removing Marcus's recurring payment from my budget, and instead redirecting that money into investment accounts for my niece and nephew's education. They should not suffer for their father's choices and dishonesty. I made no announcement, offered no explanation. I simply stopped answering financial distress calls. For the first few weeks, nothing changed. January passed without incident. Marcus had the Christmas payment to cushion him. By mid-February, the texts began. "Hey, just checking in. Everything okay? Did you change banks? The transfer did not come through this month. Burton, we need to talk. Call me as soon as possible." I read each message but did not respond. This was not impulsive anger. It was a calculated withdrawal from a relationship that had become entirely transactional, and in which I was clearly valued only for my financial contribution. By early March, the tone changed dramatically. "I do not know what game you are playing, but this is serious. We could lose the house. The mortgage is past due. Are you trying to punish us? What about the kids?" Finally, nearly 2 months after Christmas, my phone rang at 1130 at night. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided it was time to address the situation. "Hello, Marcus," I answered calmly. "What the hell, Burton?" he exploded. Without preamble, "We are about to receive a foreclosure notice. Where have you been? Why are you ignoring us?" "I am not ignoring you," I replied evenly. "I am simply no longer providing financial support." The line went silent for a moment. "What are you talking about? We had an arrangement." "Did we?" "I do not recall ever agreeing to indefinitely subsidize your lifestyle." "This is not the time for games," Marcus hissed. "We need $12,000 by Monday, or the bank starts foreclosure proceedings. This is your family we are talking about." "Interesting," I said, maintaining my composure. "I thought there was no place for losers in your world. Why would you need money from someone who has always been content with mediocrity?" Another silence, longer this time. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. "What are you talking about, Christmas? Your conversation with colleagues in your office." "I heard everything, Marcus, about how you tolerate our relationship for our parents' sake." about how we operate in completely different spheres. You were eavesdropping on a private conversation, he asked, attempting to shift blame. I was taking out the garbage that you asked me to handle, I corrected him. But that is beside the point. For years I have financially supported your family while you publicly diminished me. That arrangement has ended. Burton, come on. His tone shifted to conciliatory. You know how those workplace conversations go? You have to project confidence. Play the game. I did not mean any of that. Perhaps not, but it revealed how you truly see me, despite everything I have done for you. What do you want from me? Marcus asked, desperation creeping into his voice. An apology. Fine, I am sorry. I was wrong to say those things. I do not want an apology, I replied. I want honesty. How long have you been using my money to maintain a lifestyle you cannot afford while simultaneously mocking my life choices? The line went quiet again. Finally, Marcus sighed heavily. What do you want me to say? That I have been living beyond my means. That I have been jealous of how easily everything comes to you. This caught me off guard. Jealous of me? Do you have any idea how frustrating it is? He continued, words suddenly pouring out. You work from your apartment in sweatpants, set your own hours, and somehow make more than I do, despite everything I have sacrificed. No office politics, no 60-hour weeks, no constant pressure to maintain appearances. And you do not even appreciate your success. You live like you are still in college, while I am drowning in debt, trying to keep up the image everyone expects. I sat down, processing this unexpected revelation. Marcus, nobody forced you to buy the biggest house in the neighborhood or send your kids to private schools you cannot afford. You do not understand the pressure, he insisted. Once you start projecting a certain image, you cannot just step back without everyone seeing you as a failure. So instead, you secretly take money from your loser brother while publicly disparaging me. He had no response to this. I have set up education accounts for Jackson and Sophia, I told him after a long pause. They will have money for college regardless of what happens. But I will not continue funding your unsustainable lifestyle. So that is it. You are just cutting us off completely. The desperation in his voice was palpable. I am cutting off the financial support, I clarified. Whether that means cutting off our relationship is entirely up to you. If you only valued me for my money, then I suppose we have nothing left to discuss. Burton, please, he begged. Just this one last transfer to avoid foreclosure. Then we can figure something out. I will sell the car, cut expenses, whatever it takes. No, Marcus. This is a boundary I should have established years ago. You need to figure this out without me. Mom and Dad will lose their minds if they find out we are losing the house, he said, attempting a new angle. It will break their hearts. Perhaps it is time for everyone to know the truth, I suggested. About your finances, about my support, all these years about how you really feel about me. Transparency might be uncomfortable, but it is healthier than the dynamic we have created. The conversation ended with no resolution. Just Marcus's angry breathing and eventually a defeated whine before he hung up. In the weeks that followed, the consequences of my decision rippled through our family. Marcus and Natalie were forced to put their house on the market, downsize to a smaller rental, and withdraw the children from their expensive private schools. They sold one of their cars and canceled country club memberships and other luxuries. Our parents were confused and concerned by this sudden change in circumstances. Marcus initially told them it was a temporary setback due to company restructuring, but as more substantial lifestyle changes became necessary, the truth began to emerge in fragments. Eventually, my mother called me, her voice tight with worry. Burton, do you know what is going on with your brother? They just moved into an apartment, and Natalie is looking for work. Marcus will barely talk about it. I took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the only path forward. Mom, there is something you should know. For the past 4 years, I have been financially supporting Marcus and his family. The silence on the other end of the line told me how shocking this revelation was. What do you mean supporting them? Monthly transfers, emergency funds, covering their mortgage when they fell short, thousands of dollars every month. But why Marcus has always had a good job? Why would he need your money? Because he was living well beyond his means, I explained gently. The house, the cars, the schools, the vacations, all of it. was more than he could actually afford. And you have been paying for it all this time. Why did neither of you tell us? I think Marcus was ashamed. I suggested trying to be fair despite everything, and I enabled it because that is what family does. We help each other. But things changed recently. What happened? I debated how much to share and decided on a version of the truth that did not include the most hurtful comments. I realized I was helping him maintain a lifestyle that was fundamentally unsustainable and dishonest. It had to end eventually. My mother processed this information slowly. All these years, we thought. We always assumed Marcus was the successful one. Success looks different to different people, Mom, I said gently. Marcus chose the appearance of success. I chose financial security and work I enjoy. The conversation with my father, a few days later, was similarly difficult but necessary. Both my parents struggled to reconcile their long-held perceptions with this new reality. They felt they had failed both of us. Marcus by not teaching him financial responsibility, and me by not recognizing my achievements. 6 months after that life-changing Christmas party, our family gathered again, this time for a modest 4th of July barbecue in my parents' backyard. The dynamic was noticeably different. Marcus and his family arrived in a sensible used SUV, the children dressed in regular department store clothes rather than boutique outfits. Natalie had found work as an administrative assistant at a local school, which allowed her to be home when the children finished their days at the public elementary. Marcus had taken a position with a smaller company that offered less prestige but more reasonable hours and a slight increase in base salary. The transition had not been easy for any of them. Marcus and I had spoken only sporadically in the intervening months, our conversations strained but gradually becoming more honest. He had swung between anger pleading and eventually reluctant acceptance of the new reality. As we stood by my father's grill, Marcus approached me with 2 beers, offering one as a peace offering. "The kids miss seeing you," he said, his opening gambit. "I miss them too," I replied honestly. "They are welcome at my place any time." He nodded, taking a long sip of his beer before speaking again. "I want to say something, and I need you to just listen." I raised an eyebrow but nodded. "What you did was brutal." He began pulling the financial support without warning. "But it was also necessary. I was trapped in a cycle I could not escape on my own, too proud to admit I had built a house of cards." He looked toward where his children were playing with our cousins on the lawn. "These past months have been the hardest of my life." Explaining to Jackson why he had to change schools, watching Natalie sell her jewelry, moving from the house to an apartment a third of the size. "I never wanted to hurt the kids," I said quietly. "That is why I set up their college funds." "I know," he acknowledged, "and I appreciate that. They will too someday." He paused, struggling with his next words. "The thing is, after the initial shock and adjustment, it has not been all bad. I actually see my kids now. I am home for dinner most nights. Natalie and I are talking again. Really talking, not just coordinating schedules and bills." I studied his face, seeing unfamiliar lines of humility that had replaced his usual confident mask. "I was wrong about what matters," he continued. "All those things I said about losers and ambition and appearances, I was the one lost in a false version of success. We all make mistakes," I offered, not quite ready to fully absolve him, but acknowledging his effort. "The worst mistake was taking you for granted," Marcus said, meeting my eyes directly. "Not just the money, but you as a brother. I convinced myself I was the successful one because I needed to believe that. The truth is, you figured out what mattered long before I did." We stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of family laughter filling the backyard around us. "I cannot repay what you gave us," he finally said, "not just financially, but the wake-up call. I do not expect things to immediately go back to normal between us. I just want a chance to rebuild, this time on honest ground." I considered his words carefully. Rebuilding takes time and consistency, but I am willing to try, if you are. He nodded, relief visible in his expression. That is all I can ask for. As we rejoined the family gathering, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The boundary I had finally established had been painful but necessary, not just for my own self-respect, but ultimately for Marcus and his family as well. They were finding their way to a more authentic life, one based on what they could genuinely afford and sustain. My relationship with my parents had deepened through honesty as well. They now understood both of their sons more clearly, without the distortion of false appearances. And I had learned something crucial about myself: that enabling harmful patterns out of a misplaced sense of family obligation is not true support. Real love sometimes means allowing people to face the consequences of their choices, no matter how difficult that might be. That evening, watching the fireworks with my family, I felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in years. The future of our relationships remained uncertain, but at least now we were all standing on solid ground, seeing each other clearly for perhaps the first time. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? How did you handle it, and did it change your relationship for better or worse? Share your stories in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more authentic family stories. Share with someone who might need encouragement to set healthy boundaries in their own relationships. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their own choices.